Today we're going to add and subtract rational expressions, and really this is just adding and subtracting fractions, just like we did back in, I don't know, elementary school or whenever it is that you learned how to add fractions. So let's go back to the basics. If I asked you to do 1/3 plus 3/5, you cannot just add the top and add the bottom. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a common denominator. Like you can add 1/4 plus 2/4 to get 3/4. You can add those because the denominators are the same. So if you've got something like 1/3 plus 3/5, you need to take 1/3 and 3/5 and get common denominators. So you'd think about, what do 3 and 5 have in common? 15. So you would do 3 times 5, but then you also multiply the top, and this one times 3, and that would give you 5/15 and 9/15. And then you could actually combine these. 5 plus 9 is 14, so this is 14/15. Okay, what you're basically doing is you're multiplying the fraction by a fancy version of 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So you're taking this 1/3 times 1, it's just a fancy version of 1, to change that fraction into 5/15. The one thing I kind of want you to see here is that in this fraction that we are actually able to add, both of them have a factor of 3, both of them have a factor of 5, and then we are able to actually add the tops together, and the final answer, this denominator, is still 3 times 5. So the denominator has that factor of 3 and that factor of 5. That'll make more sense in a minute. So the first couple problems you're given are super, super easy. Notice 3x, 3x, they're the same. If the denominators are the same, you can add the tops. 4 plus 5 is 9. So we have 9 over 3x. Now, do think about, can you simplify this further? What is 9 divided by 3? 9 divided by 3 is 3. So our answer here is 3 divided by x. Number 2, the bottoms are the same. Both of them are x minus 4. So we do 5 minus 8, which is negative 3, over x minus 4. Okay, I'm actually going to do number 4 next, and I'm going to change this problem a little bit. So if you're writing this down on a piece of paper, we are actually going to do the problem x minus 1 over x squared plus 4x plus 3. So the first fraction we're not changing, plus x over x plus 3. So we are changing the second fraction a little bit, because this makes number 4 more similar to the problems on your assignment. And I want you to really be able to see how to do the problems on your assignment. Okay, so this one, the denominators are not the same. The other thing I notice is that this first denominator can be factored. So my first goal is to factor that denominator. We are looking for two numbers that multiply to give us 3 and add up to 4. That would be 1 times 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 plus 3 is 4. Both of them positive. Leave yourself some space and then write plus this other fraction, x over x plus 3. Once you get both denominators factored, now you play the matchy game. You need the denominators to match. Just like we did up here, both of them had a factor of 3, both of them had a factor of 5, the denominators matched, so then we could move forward. So in number 4, both of them have x plus 3. The first one has x plus 1. So the second denominator needs that x plus 1. But if you multiply it on the bottom, you have to also multiply it on the top. So I'm going to multiply in the x plus 1 on the bottom and the top. Okay, now the denominators match. That means our common denominator, our answer denominator, is x plus 1, x plus 3. or x plus 3, x plus 1. The order that you write those two parentheses does not matter. On the top, we have x minus 1 from the first fraction, and then we have plus, and we can distribute x squared plus 1x. Your final step is going to be to combine like terms. So on the top, we've got x squared plus 2x minus 1. And on the bottom, we have our common denominator, x plus 1, x plus 3. Now let's go back to number 3. Number 3 is a little bit different because we are going to have to factor both denominators before we get started. So our first fraction is currently x plus 1 over, and we need to factor this denominator. So two numbers that multiply to give us 9 and add up to 6. That would be positive 3 and positive 3. Leave yourself some space. The other thing I want to warn you about is when you see minus. When you see minus, change it to plus a negative. So leave some space for you to do your common denominator stuff. And then we've got plus a negative 1 over, and do you remember how to factor x squared minus 9? That'd be x plus 3, x minus 3. Okay, so two things here. Factor both denominators and space it out and change that minus to plus a negative. By moving that negative to the top of that second fraction, it'll be a lot easier to not make a mistake with your negative later. Okay, now we need to play the matchy game. I noticed that the first one and the second one both have an x plus 3. The first one has another x plus 3 that the second fraction does not have, so we need to put an x plus 3 on the top and the bottom. Now they both have that x plus 3. But the second one has an x minus 3 that this first one does not have, so we need x minus 3 on the first one. Okay. Now the denominators match. And I like to use colors. If you have highlighters, colored pencils, crayons, markers, colored pens, anything, using color on this can be very, very helpful because then visually you can see both denominators have yellow, green, and pink. They match. So our common denominator is x plus 3, x plus 3, x minus 3. Now that the denominators match, now we can actually do the stuff on the top. So in this first fraction, we are going to have to double distribute. We're going to have x squared minus 3x plus 1x minus 3. I'm going to extend this line. In the second fraction, we have negative 1 times x and negative 1 times 3. Now see, by putting that negative in that second fraction, we made sure to distribute that negative to the entire numerator, and that was the point. That's why I wanted you to do that step in the first place, so that you treat that negative correctly when you got to that step. Now we can combine like terms. On the top, we have x squared, negative 3x plus 1x minus 1x, so that's just negative 3x. And negative 3 and negative 3 is negative 6. On the bottom, because there are two of these, x plus 3 and x plus 3, we can write it as x plus 3 squared, x minus 3. Okay, number 5 looks a lot more difficult than it is. It really is not difficult at all. And I'm going to leave a little space because we're going to do one extra problem. We're going to add a number 6 here. Okay, so we have 2 over x plus 5 over, what does x squared really mean? X times x. We'll change that minus to a plus, a negative. So we have negative 3 over x plus 6. Okay, matchy game. These two have x. This one needs an x. I'm going to put it after the numerator, but in front of the denominator. The second one has another x. So the first one needs that. And the third one needs that. The last one has x plus 6. We need that on the first one and the second one. So x plus 6, x plus 6. Okay, now all three of my fractions have a yellow, a green, and a pink. So our common denominator is yellow, green, and pink. And if you want to keep up that yellow, green, and pink so that you can really see that visually, that common denominator, that works. Now we can do all of the math on the top. So we've got 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 6 is 12x. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times 6 is 30. Negative 3 times xx is negative 3x squared. Then just combine your like terms. 2x squared and negative 3x squared would be negative 1x squared. 12x and 5x would give us 17x. And we've got positive 30. And our denominator is x times x, or x squared, times x plus 6. Okay, for an additional problem, for number 6, I want to roll this back to the easier problems. 2x over x plus 2 plus 4 over x plus 2. Notice x plus 2 and x plus 2 are the same, so we can combine the top. We've got 2x plus 4 over x plus 2. Do you see anything interesting about the top of this fraction? I see that 2x and 4 have 2 in common. So 2x divided by 2 is x, 4 divided by 2 is 2. So this is actually 2 times x plus 2 divided by x plus 2. Those x plus 2's would then cancel, and your answer would simply be 2. And because this canceled on the bottom, you would have to also add that x can't equal negative 2. Remember, like in number 4 up here, because we've got x plus 1 and x plus 3 in the answer, it's just assumed x can't be negative 1, x can't be negative 3, because those would clearly make the denominator equal 0. But in number 6, if that x plus 2 cancels out, in this answer, it is not clear that x can't equal negative 2, so you'd have to add that little piece. I think there's one problem in your assignment like that, and I think they actually give you this part. You just have to find what that answer is. So I just wanted you to see that stuff canceling is potentially a possibility, but I think it'll only happen in one problem on your assignment today.